What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video I'm going to be going through the #1 draft strategy if you have a late first round pick in fantasy this year. So specifically pick 9, pick 10, pick 11, and pick 12. If I'm being honest, this is by far my least favorite kind of pocket of the draft to be picking in, but I think that makes it even more important to go in with a solid strategy, understand what kinds of players, what specific players you should be looking to target in the early rounds, and then also just like understanding how you can construct these teams. So I'm going to be going through some of the top targets in the first 3 rounds. Then I'm going to be diving into 4 different mock drafts, one from pick 9, 10, 11, and 12, just to show you guys what kind of starts you can put together and how you can really build some solid teams, even if I don't think it's the best draft position. So let's dive right into it here, starting off with the first round targets. Now, in my other draft strategy videos, I've talked about how I have a pretty clear top 8. And towards the bottom of that top 8 are Amon-Ra St. Brown and Justin Jefferson. Those are my 107 and my 108. So on the graphic here, this is consensus ADP using 4 for 4. So green means I think these guys are really nice picks in this area. Red means I do not like the prices. Yellow means I think, they're fine picks in this range. So you can see here, Justin Jefferson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, they're typically not going to be falling, 1-9 or later. But I think if they're there, they're really strong picks. I think Jefferson probably has the better chance of falling. Maybe people don't like the J.J. McCarthy injury. That Vikings offense as a whole is pretty banged up. So maybe you see a guy like A.J. Brown, jump ahead of Justin Jefferson. But I think more often than not, Jefferson and Amon-Ra St. Brown are going to be gone at this point. But if they're not, like I said, I think they're great picks. Then I also have a pretty clear top 4 from like the 109 through the 112 area. And that top 4 is A.J. Brown, Garrett Wilson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Puka Nacua. I can pretty much go either way on Garrett Wilson, A.J. Brown, and then Jahmyr Gibbs and Puka Nacua just kind of get bumped to the bottom due to injuries, but I'm not overly concerned about either of those dudes. So I think if you're picking from 9 through 12, those are the 4 guys that I would be looking at. Garrett Wilson, A.J. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, Puka Nacua. You can see I have Puka in yellow here, and it's just because if he's going to be going more often in like the early second round, and he is like my 12th overall player, while I would take him at the 112, I'd prefer to get him in the second round. That would just, be a better value. You can see here guys like Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, they'll sneak in, to the late first round area on certain platforms in certain drafts. That's just not a spot where I like drafting those guys. I have Jahmyr Gibbs pretty firmly over both of them. I'd be willing to take them in the early second round, but I even have a guy like Devon Achane over those two. I know that's controversial. I know most people are going to disagree with that, but like I'd go Achane at the 201 if I only had one specific draft. So JT, Saquon, I think they're fine in the early second, but I'm not taking them in the first round. Now, shifting into round 2, we're obviously going to see a lot of, similar names here because it's, pretty much back-to-back picks here. So Garrett Wilson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Puka Nacua, I talked about all those dudes, they slot in from the 109 through the 112. So if you're getting any of those 3 in the second round, I think they're really, really strong picks. Like I said, Saquon Barkley, I have him, I believe, is my 203, so I'd be fine taking him early second. I don't think he's necessarily like a screaming value, but fine pick there. Same thing with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Kyren Williams. I think Saquon and Kyren, I have them back-to-back in my rankings, very, very close together. And then Marvin Harrison Jr., even though I do prefer the running backs in this area, like I think my 201 through 204 is Achane, JT, Saquon, then Kyren. If you're not in a super running back hungry league, or maybe you've already snagged a Jahmyr Gibbs, maybe you had a falling Bijan Robinson, I don't necessarily hate the idea of, getting a Marvin Harrison Jr. over one of these running backs, if you think it's going to work out for you in your specific league, on your specific platform. But in most leagues, casual leagues, home leagues, where people are going to be very running back heavy, I do prefer to draft Saquon, Kyren, Achane before we get into like that next tier of wide receiver after like those clear top 8. And then you can see Derrick Henry, Devontae Adams going, mid round 2 area. These are guys maybe, in certain leagues, they get pushed up into the early second. I really have no interest in drafting either of those dudes, from pick 201 through 204. So those are my top targets through round 2. Now looking at round 3, I think this is an interesting spot because depending on the way the draft kind of shakes out, I think this could be a spot where you get some nice value. I think if you're in a very sharp room, it kind of turns into a, not super appealing 3-4 turn area. So you can see the guys here I have in green. I really like wide receiver in this range. Cooper Kupp, Jalen Waddle, DJ Moore. I think those guys are all solid picks in the late third round. I'd even be willing to take guys like Malik Neighbors, Tank Dell, DK Metcalf, also wide receivers like that in this 3-4 turn area. You can see I'm not in on Patrick Mahomes. I'm actually fine with Jalen Hurts in like the late third. I'm definitely lower than consensus on the elite tight ends, the elite quarterbacks, Travis Kelce, Sam Laporta, Josh Allen. Those guys on most platforms are going 2-3 turn area or early to mid third. I'm not willing to take them there. This late third round area is when I would start to consider it. So if you do get a Jalen Hurts, a Josh Allen, one of those top 2 tight ends, I'm fine taking them in this spot. I just don't think they're going to fall here a ton. So those are some of my favorite targets through the first 3 rounds. Now let's actually dive into some mock drafts, just kind of see what we're looking at here. So starting off here with pick number 9, at the 109, I went with Garrett Wilson. My top 8 were off the board. Like I said, I have Garrett Wilson, A.J. Brown neck and neck. I slightly prefer Garrett Wilson, but you could go either way. So you could think of this as a Garrett Wilson pick or an A.J. Brown pick. Then I go with Devon Achane at the 204. I will just throw this out there that I'm going to be playing in a lot of leagues. So, I might not draft Achane here, even though I value him here from a player perspective. If I'm going to be in a ton of leagues and I know I can draft Achane in the mid to late second round, then maybe I don't draft him here at the 204. But in terms of my player rankings, this would be the pick. So we start off going Garrett Wilson, Devon Achane. This is going to look like a hero RB team. Round 3, round 4, I like the value we get on wide receivers. Cooper Kupp, Malik Neighbors. I think on super running back hungry platforms, getting a guy like Cooper Kupp, Jalen Waddle could go in this area, DJ Moore, Malik Neighbors, those are all just really solid values at the wide receiver position. So if you can lock down at least one solid running back through the first 2 rounds, I think you're going to be in a really good spot to, have a lot of depth at wide receiver with a lot of high ceiling, options. Then we get a Dalton Kincaid pick in the 509. And I think one kind of criticism I do have with like the late first round area is that you can get kind of phased out both on elite quarterback and elite tight end, because if you're getting Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts going like 2-3 turn, mid third round, and then you're getting Travis Kelce, Sam Laporta taken there, it doesn't feel like you're getting a great value on like Trey McBride, Mark Andrews in the 3-4 turn area, even though I would be willing to take them there. It doesn't seem like you're getting a steal. And then on certain leagues, certain platforms, you could see these tight ends, Dalton Kincaid, Kyle Pitts, get pushed up into like the early to mid 5th round. Same thing with some of the quarterbacks, like Anthony Richardson could be off the board. So you can kind of get stuck without those elite options, but that was not the case here at tight end because we did get Dalton Kincaid at the 509. Then I went with a 604 James Conner. I think in my last draft strategy video, looking at the mid-round picks, pick 5 through pick 8, I drafted James Conner in a couple of those mock drafts. He's someone that I'm just really starting to like here, like really anywhere in the 6th round. Originally, coming into the season, we have concerns about Trey Benson. They spend a day 2 pick on him, should be the running back of the future, but he hasn't really been making a ton of noise in training camp, didn't look great in their first preseason game, so it looks like James Conner should be the established running back 1 here on an offense that should be much better than last year. And James Conner straight up played very well last year. Like, even though he's getting up there in age, he had a couple inefficient seasons. He was legit good last year, not just a volume option. So James Conner to be my running back 2, I think is a fine pick. Then we go back to the wide receiver position. We get Xavier Worthy. We get Deontay Johnson. We now have wide receivers through the flex +1 that I would feel confident, throwing into my starting lineup. Then we get a later 9th round Brian Robinson, which I think is a great pick to be our running back 3. This was not a team where we went early quarterback. We went Kincaid over Anthony Richardson, and then Richardson did not fall to us in the 6th round. So I snagged Jaden Daniels in the 10th. Love the upside there out of Jaden Daniels, getting him in the double-digit rounds. And then, rookie quarterback, some uncertainty, not the best situation. So I went out and snagged Matthew Stafford to stack him with Cooper Kupp, who's lining up to be our wide receiver 2. A couple more depth options at running back with Rico Dowdle, Ray Davis, and then one more late flyer at the wide receiver position with Dontavian Wicks. Overall, I think a really solid team. Love our running back 1 with Achane. Gonna have James Conner, Brian Robinson competing for that running back 2 slot. Wide receiver depth is solid. Garrett Wilson, Cooper Kupp, Malik Neighbors, Xavier Worthy. I think our quarterback position is really solid, especially, waiting at the position, not drafting our first one until round 10. And then I like Kincaid, think he has a lot of upside this year at the tight end position. So that was from the 109. Now this next mock draft is going to be from the 110. So I think this is a spot where when you're drafting like this 1-2 turn area, if the value is going to be there at wide receiver, you could, accept a 0 RB team. I know a lot of people don't like it, but here's just an example of it. You guys can let me know what you think of it. So we go Garrett Wilson round 1 again, and then we go Marvin Harrison Jr. Then we're in this spot where if I'm in a ton of leagues, probably don't want to draft Achane this high if I don't have to. We definitely could have gone Kyron Williams, but I did just want to get a 0 RB look here. So we get Marvin Harrison Jr. in the second round. I think some people are going to really like that price. Others are going to hate it, but let's just see how it plays out. So then 3-4 turn, we get Jalen Waddle, DJ Moore. We have 4 absolute stud wide receivers. I think these 4 are all top 18 wide receivers in my rankings. I believe that's where they're at. So just, dominating the wide receiver position. Then obviously if you're going 0 RB, you want an elite option, ideally at both quarterback and tight end. So we get an elite upside option in Kyle Pitts. Some people aren't going to like Pitts. I like him. We passed on Anthony Richardson, and Richardson definitely could have been the pick here. I just felt more confident getting a higher ceiling quarterback after this, whereas in my opinion, Kyle Pitts is kind of like the cutoff when it comes to those elite tight end options. After, Kincaid, Kyle Pitts, I feel like then you're looking at, your Njokus, your Fergusons, like fine players, but not as secure, not as much upside. So then we get a round 6 T. Higgins, and at this point we are wide receivers through the flex +1. You may be thinking, why would you draft T. Higgins if he's just going to be on the bench? And it just comes down to the fact that you're going to have bye weeks, you're going to have injuries. It's very unlikely that our first 4 wide receivers are staying healthy throughout the entire season. So having one extra option, I think, has us pretty much set at the wide receiver position for a very long time. And then the quarterback that I was kind of eyeing up here was Kyler Murray, and we get him to fall to the 7-10, someone who I think has the upside to compete with some of those elite options, but is just being drafted at a severe discount. So we snag Kyler Murray. We're out of the running back dead zone. Now it's time to get serious about the running back position. So we rattle off 5 straight running back picks, ideally looking for guys in somewhat ambiguous situations, guys who can break out and really become relevant for fantasy and kind of expand on their roles. So we go Jaylen Warren, who I think is a fine starting option right away. We go Brian Robinson, another guy who I think we can slot in as the running back 2 and feel fine about it. Chase Brown in an ambiguous situation with the Bengals. Zach Charbonnet, looking like more of a handcuff, but I still think there's some hope he can have a pass catching role, also a role on the goal line. Then we go Rico Dowdle, someone who I think is probably the favorite to lead this Cowboys backfield. And then Bucky Irving in the last round with a Demario Douglas wide receiver pick thrown in there. So for 0 RB, I feel like this roster is looking pretty nice. Obviously the wide receiver position is insane. 5 top 30 wide receivers, solid quarterback, solid tight end. Running back, I feel like is fine considering we took our first one in round 8. So that was a 0 RB look. Now with the 11th pick, we're going to be looking at double hero RB, which I think is also very viable from this like 1-2 turn area. So we get a 111 Jahmyr Gibbs. Then at 202, we could be choosing between Jonathan Taylor, Saquon Barkley, Kyron Williams. We could have gone Puka here. He would have been my best player available, but I wanted to get a double hero RB look. So we go Jahmyr Gibbs. Then we go Jonathan Taylor in the second. At this point, I typically don't love the running back value 3-4 turn. Also don't normally love it 5-6 turn. So I snag Deebo Samuel late 3rd round, Cooper Kupp early 4th round. We get an elite quarterback to fall to us in Anthony Richardson at the 5-11. Then we hammer wide receivers, Xavier Worthy, Ladd McConkey, Brian Thomas Jr. I know it's a lot of rookie wide receivers. That's kind of my typical strategy here. I think those are the most valuable picks. The guys you're kind of getting at a discount. Then we get our running back 3 and Tajay Spears in round 9. Didn't have to be a running back pick. I just think getting Spears 9-10 turn is a nice option to be our running back 3. We get our 6th wide receiver in Cortland Sutton. So wide receivers through the flex +2 that I'd feel decent about starting. And this was a team where we kind of punted the tight end position. We go round 11, J.K. Dobbins, who I don't draft a ton of, but I'm kind of coming around on. He's kind of someone where I feel like you're going to see what we get out of him early in the season. If it looks like he's completely cooked, then you just cut him, pick up another handcuff, no harm, no foul. But then tight end here, we go Taysom Hill and Hunter Henry. I like getting one of those top 11. If I don't get one of the top 11, I like to go with Pat Freiermuth. We saw Freiermuth get picked at the 11:08 before our 11:11 pick. So first 11 were off the board. Freiermuth was off the board. Taysom Hill's the next guy I kind of pivot to. Someone who I think could be startable week to week. And then Hunter Henry, just kind of shooting for someone who could be a top 2 target on their team. I think that's definitely in the range of outcomes here for Hunter Henry, with the Patriots wide receiver room just kind of being all over the place. And then our other pick here was Ray Davis at running back. So we're anchored by those 2 stud running backs, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jonathan Taylor. We have an elite quarterback. Obviously, tight end is the weakness. I think our wide receiver room is completely fine. Deebo Samuel, Cooper Kupp, Xavier Worthy, Ladd McConkey, Brian Thomas Jr., and then Cortland Sutton. So double hero RB, definitely something I think you can pull off here, especially I know a lot of people are higher on Jonathan Taylor, higher on Saquon Barkley than I am. So there are a lot of unique combinations you can kind of put together here. Jahmyr Gibbs is always an option. You could go Saquon JT if you're like at that 112, 201 area. Kyron Williams could also get into the mix. So a lot of different combinations you could put together there. But then our final mock here, this is going to be from the 112. And this is a start that I really, really like because we got 2 of my guys in the top 12. So I go Jahmyr Gibbs at the 112. Then I go Puka Nacua at the 201, starting a hero RB team here, 3-4 turn. 2 guys I also really like the value on, Deebo Samuel, Jalen Waddle. Not sure if Deebo was in the ADP I talked about, but if he's falling into the late 3rd, I think he's a great pick. Plus you have that extra upside of if Brandon Ayuk gets traded, I think his ADP is going to rise even more. So late 3rd Deebo, I think is just a smash value. So Deebo, Jalen Waddle, and then we get a late 5th round Kyle Pitts, which I really like the value on. I think there are going to be a lot of people out there who are just completely out on Kyle Pitts because he's been underwhelming over the past few seasons, but he's still very young. He's proven he's talented, and now he finally has a legit quarterback to kind of help him there with Kirk Cousins. So I like the Pitts pick. Then we go round 6, Aaron Jones, another spot where I don't, typically hammer the running back position, but we're looking at the wide receivers available. Could have been a Keenan Allen, a Terry McLaurin, a Chris Godwin, but I'm just kind of in this spot from like mid-tier wide receiver 3 into like fringe wide receiver 3 territory. I have all those guys in that same mix. So like Xavier Worthy would be thrown in there, Keenan Allen, Terry, Chris Godwin, Deontay Johnson. So I didn't really want to reach on one of those guys at the 601 when I felt like I could get someone from that range here at the the 712, which is exactly what happened because I got Deontay Johnson here at the 712. Aaron Jones, with the injuries to the Vikings, I think he's going to be involved as a pass catcher, and I just think he's a very solid, reliable running back 2 option. In the 8th round, we get Zamir White, another player who I don't find myself drafting a ton of, but if I'm getting Zamir White at the 801, I think it's a good pick. He's someone who has a lot of characteristics of your typical, dead zone running back. Not super proven, not a great offense, getting propped up by like expected volume, but I think the Raiders really like him. I think they're going to want to use him heavily, especially on the ground. We saw it in the games where Josh Jacobs missed. They really relied on him to just be like their 3-down workhorse. So Zamir White as my running back 3, getting him in the 8th round, I think it's a nice discount, and I'll definitely take it. Round 9, we get Christian Watson to be our wide receiver 5. Another draft where we're wide receivers through the flex +1 in guys that I'd feel comfortable starting. This was a draft where we did wait on quarterback, so we go Jaden Daniels, Matthew Stafford. I think this was the second time we did that combination. When I'm punting on quarterback, I really like getting either Caleb Williams or Jaden Daniels. Daniels was the guy that fell to me here. Caleb Williams went at the 906. So I really like going after either one of those dudes, if I can get them. And then Matthew Stafford, instead of stacking him with Cooper Kupp, we stack him with Puka Nacua, who was our early 2nd round pick. Then wrap up this draft with J.K. Dobbins, Dontavian Wicks, and Bucky Irving. So a solid running back room. Jahmyr Gibbs as our locked and loaded running back 1. I think Aaron Jones and Zamir White could filter in the running back 2 spot. I like our wide receiver picks. I like Kyle Pitts in the tight end position. So I do think, there are a few ways you can execute your drafts here based on what players you like, based on how the value falls. It could be double hero RB. It could be hero RB. It could be zero RB. You definitely have a lot of variety. I don't necessarily love the values you're getting in that like 1-2 turn area, but I think the value could definitely be there 3-4 turn. So if you guys have any questions, drop them down below. I'll make sure to get back to you as soon as I can. But thank you all for stopping by. Hopefully you enjoyed. Hit that like button, subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one.